fine.
V'seora seor hey. So we're in the middle. We're going to finish up, God willing, the Usfartem Lachem Ochat Shabbat. What we saw so far is that all the work that we have every day in davening is helpful for the nefesh elokis, but there's nothing there for the nefesh behemis. So for that we have a special mitzvah, the mitzvah of the Omer. Why? Because we said first of all that the Omer is made from barley, which is the food of animals. So it's something that's meant for animals, for the animal soul. Now he says, Useor shi'ur hei, or seor hei, v'hainu bebirurim shelamatat shenivarim v'nichlalim b'chinat be'ema rabba. So, what's the point? Why does a person have an animal soul? What's it good for? So the usual understanding is that it's good for battling against it. You go against it. But here we're going in a different direction. We're not talking about how the animal soul is something to be overcome. Rather, we're talking about how the animal soul is supposed to be transformed.
You're going to bring him in to join the army with you.
Right. And what's his great quality? That he is tireless. He's absolutely tireless. And and when he reaches this higher level, that's like the animal faces in the chariot that are carrying Hashem, that they have this quality. There's even a man there. There's even a figure of a man there carrying the chariot in the Ofanim. So all of these, but especially the animals, have this quality of being able to do things without questioning it, and just doing it. It's Kabbalah soul, to accept the yoke of heaven. And for that you need an animal soul, because the more a person thinks, the less able he is to commit himself to something that doesn't make perfect sense to him, that he can't rationalize 100%. And that is a positive trait in certain areas, and it's a negative trait in other areas. So you have to have a combination of the two. So the so it says he killed it, but he transformed it. It's not just he killed it; he transformed it into the Be'ema Rabbah. Like David HaMelech is the example in Tanya of the tzaddik who killed his Yetzer Hara. He killed the negative thing that comes from the animal soul. The Yetzer Hara is the negative aspect. The evil inclinations, the negative aspect comes out of it. And he uses the positive aspect that comes out of it, which is the ability to carry the yoke, the ability to carry forward and to so on. That's called Be'ema Rabbah. That's called the great beast. Where does David say this? He says, Bahamot ha'iti imach v'ani tamid imach. That I'm like an animal with you, and I'm always with you. Dafka especially because I have transformed my animal soul into something, a beast of burden, that it's able to carry me through all the difficult times, that even if I don't feel like it and I can't get up and whatever, my as people call it, the creature of habit in me, the habitual in me will get me up and get me going. So this is all called the birurim, all the clarifications that came from below with all the work that a person did, and it is included in the Be'ema Rabbah Hanal, in this greater beast. K'ma'amar yotzer meshartim, as we say in davening, that they're called servants. Sheyesh melachim shehem beteilim bechol yom v'nivlaim v'nichlalim b'bchinat Be'ema Rabbah Hanal. So the way to think about this is that each one of these acts that we do of overcoming the difficulties that we have in this world creates an angel, creates an energy of an angel, and these angels, they make up the greater beast.
This has everything to do in the times of Mashiach with the
Leviathan
of the Goyim are going to come and serve us. You know, the Queen of England is going to come and do spongea for you.
Send one of her servants. I don't know if I need her. Probably do it quicker. But
no, it's a different issue.
Where did you see this?
It says
that the Malachim will come.
All the great ones of the Goyim,
the archangels.
Given a special privilege that they're allowed to come and clean our toilets, you know, as a reward for their high status before Mashiach.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where did you see this? All over the place. I haven't even seen it even once. What I have seen is that when the temple is destroyed, so we receive from them the sustenance. we're dependent on the nations of the world for sustenance. But when the temple is built, all the angels of all the archangels of each nation, they every morning they come to the borders of the land of Israel. Yeah, this is some kind of a spiritual metaphor. And once the korban of the daily korban is brought, the tamid, so they receive their sustenance for the day from that, and then they go back to their countries, to their nations. And in that sense, they're dependent. There's a whole discussion about whether it's a good thing or not a good thing. Do you want actually to have somebody doing it for you? I'd rather have a machine do it. Why? Because a non-Jew has a brain. Why can't he learn Torah? You can decide to convert. Already it won't be conversion. There'll be other things. Jew mamish, but it can be other things.
They won't accept any.
Can, but you can do as much as you can. By the way, they did. Malkat Shva was. That's a very interesting halacha in the Rambam. There's a big discussion, a lot of discussions around it about whether or not, first of all, where the Rambam got, because everything shows the contrary. That there were converts all the time, especially. Omer. In any case, so it all depends on your perspective, I guess. So what is this all about? How does this happen? כמאמר יוצא משרתים שיש מלאכים כמו המאכל שעורים שנבלע בבהמה שלמטה וחוזרים ומתחדשים בכל יום. Just like the animal below eats the grain and the barley, and from that you see that he is able to work. Okay? And these angels every day they also become they're also renewed to be able to eat the barley that came from these endeavors of overcoming of being able to push through. So the food, the two types of food, ma'achal adam, ma'achal be'ema, the food that's good for a human, that's meant for a human being, and the food that's meant for an animal, he defines as the difference between Torah and science. He says the Torah is the food for human beings. That's what the human brain needs to consume. And in terms of the level that it affects, the difficult work that scientists do, which is not easy at all, and it takes also a very strong stamina, very strong willpower. He says that's the food of the animals, meaning that's the food of the animal soul. And it's true. Many people, mamish, are turned on by this very much. They feel that science is that's the difference between the lower waters and the higher waters. In a certain sense, it's the difference between how we drink and the animals drink. We drink from the higher waters. You take it like this, from top, and the animal has to stoop down and drink like with their tongue or however they do it. So it's a lower sense of sustenance, of receiving sustenance from a lower source. Bezeu yanifenu, and this is why the Kohen, that when he takes the Omer, when he takes this meal offering, he has to, what's the word? Wave it. He has to wave it. שהוא בחינת חסד העליון, העלה את העולה או העלה את בחינת בהמה רבה הנ"ל. Okay? So by waving it, he's not just waving it. To להניף is to lift it up. So he's lifting up the food that was meant or taken from the meal offering of barley that's meant for animals, and he's lifting it up to its real source in these angels, in this Behema Rabbah, this great beast. Are we? על ידי עומר שעורה שיעור ה' הנ"ל, like we just said, לפני הוויה, למעלה מהוויה כנודע. And this reaches higher than the name Havaya. So theoretically, he's talking about not the first Havaya, but the second Havaya. Havaya, Keler Chum V'Chanun, 13 Principles of Mercy. So he probably means here like the second Havaya, which is after a person sins. So this is a rectification for all of that. וזהו ממחרת השבת ולא ממחרת יום טוב, שהוא למעלה מבחינת שבת. And this is why the Torah says that you should bring this meal offering the day after the Sabbath, and it doesn't say the day after the holiday. Why? Because it wants to tell us that this reaches higher than even the Sabbath. This is a greater, it has a greater effect on the world than even the Shabbos does. And then the Sfiras Omer, when you actually count, to count is to bring something down. So you're bringing the surrounding lights that have been created down into this world. That's why we count. Today is one day for the Omer. Because Yom hu b'chinat chesed, because the word day, Yom, is always associated with chesed, with loving kindness, which is bringing Hashem's kindness down into the world. Yomam yitzaveh Hashem chazdo. Every day, God commands His kindness. והיינו בחינת חסד עליון להמשיך מלמעלה למטה לבחינת עומר, כדי שיהיה ביטול הרצון מנפש ומין גם כן דווקא. And that symbolizes bringing down into our animal soul the ability to nullify before Hashem. Every one of these days, of these 49 days. וזהו דווקא, sorry, where are we? Okay. So what did we add from this? We added that there's a special work during the special service during these 49 days that affects the animal soul and allows it to receive from its higher source, which is actually higher even than the source of Shabbos. Meaning, on Shabbos also the animal rests. There's also sabbatical for the animal soul. It doesn't have to work so hard on Shabbat. But this is higher than that because its real purpose is not to stop working. Its real bittul is not when it doesn't do what it needs to do. Its real bittul is when it receives from the higher animal, from the greater beast, it receives the ability to push through even the most difficult times. So in that sense, it's higher than Shabbos when it rests fully. וזהו לרצונכם, כדי שיהיה ביטול הרצון שלכם על ידי המשכת המקיפים הנ"ל על ידי ספירת העומר. That's what it says, according to your will. It's not exactly what it means. It means לרצונכם, into your will, so that your will is also nullified through these lights, these surrounding lights that are brought down by counting the Omer. So it changes the person's willpower. וזהו ספרתם לכם, היינו להמשיך הערת המקיפים הנ"ל שהוא ממחרת השבת דווקא כנ"ל לכם למטה, להפוך את נפש הבהמית גם כן שיהיה ביטול רצונכם. So this is what we mean by the whole verse, that we count for ourselves, meaning this is for our benefit. And it's not for the benefit of the divine soul. וזהו מיום אביאכם את עומר. This is why it says, on the day, from the day that you bring the Omer, פירוש מאותו יום שהניפו את העומר, שהוא לפני Hashem. From the day that the Omer was waved high, from the day that the meal offering was made before God, אזי סוטה לכם, תמשיכו לכם על ידי ספירת העומר, שבע שבתות שמם תת מידות. So you bring down the surrounding lights for each one of the 49 attributes that are 7 times 7, from loving kindness down to kingdom. So this is a very important thing, because here it's usually quoted that in the Kavanos of Sfiras Omer, our kavana is about the pnimi. That's the way it's usually explained. What does the pnimi mean? That I'm changing the attribute of loving kindness, I'm changing the attribute of might of loving kindness, and so on. Like today would be chesed of hod. So I'm changing it. But according to the Alter Rebbe, it's not, you might be working on it, but the reason you can work on it is because you brought down a surrounding light. You brought down a makif. And the makif is not hod shebanetzach. That's not the makif. So this is credited usually to the Rashash, to Reb Shalom Sharabi. That he has a whole kavana, and the Friedrich Rebbe quotes him. He has a whole kavana that the vessel in each day is what we read, hod shebachesed, but the light in each day is the makif. But here I see that the Alter Rebbe said this before him. I didn't know. I don't know why he doesn't quote the Alter Rebbe from here, because it seems to be saying the same thing. What does it mean? The makif is different than the pnimi. Maybe that's the thing the Alter Rebbe doesn't say here explicitly, but the Rashash does say explicitly. He says, when you count the first day, you're really counting in the vessel chesed shebachesed, but in the makif it's malchus shebemalchus. That's the Rebbe talked about this a number of times. That there's a kavanah that says exactly the opposite. The question, what you should be thinking of? Should you be thinking about the pnimi that you're changing, or what you're bringing down, which is to help you change it? So I imagine that as time will go on, it'll be added to the siddur. Or it's easy to calculate. It's not so. I mean, you just go backwards. But in that case, the netzach shebanetzach, no, the 25th day is the middle exactly.
Right.
But the Ma'arash's day, Tiferes Shebetiferes, that's exactly the day that corresponds to Hod Shebahod.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting that they're very related in that sense. ואז היה יכול להיות אחר כך מתן תורה בשבועות שהוא גילוי רצונו ממש מלמעלה. And after we worked for 49 days on changing how your animal soul functions, then you can come to Shavuos. And Shavuos is already the biggest makif. It's revealing Hashem's actual will when He gave the Torah. מלמעלה למטה שהוא למעלה מתפילה, שהוא בחינת יציאת מצרים, שהוא הרצון. And this is obviously for both the animal soul and for the divine soul. It's telling you what the will of Hashem is. It's even more than what you can gain in davening, in regular service. And in that sense, a person who's Torato, Manuto, he doesn't have to daven, like Rabbi Yehuda, who davened once every 30 days. And other people who daven, Rashbi, when he came out of the cave, he davened even less. Ve'ahavta b'chol levavcha, and it's more than the ratzo of davening. And it's rather ve'ahavta b'chol levavcha b'chinat bitul b'tachlit ki yesh mi she'ohev, because the highest you can reach is that the person feels that he is nullified before God. But he feels that he is nullified. There's a he there, there's a yesh. There's some kind of being here who's nullified. But by learning Torah, which is the words of Hashem in his mouth. When you learn Torah, you're saying the words that Hashem said. I'll put my words in your mouth, my words mamish. Or like the Magid's, the Beis Yosef's, who used to start every time that he went into Beis Medrash. We talked about this once, Megid Meisharim. And it was over a number of years, and he would every Erev Shabbos, Leil Shabbos, after finishing his meal, he would go to the Beis Medrash and start saying Mishnayos. And after a few years, this Magid started coming to him and speaking to him. It was beautiful Divrei Torah that there. And there were some people who were present and heard him. And this Magid, this angel that spoke from his mouth, it used to start with the words, Ani Mishnah medaveret bepicha. I am the Mishnah speaking in your mouth. So these are the actual words of Hashem. And like the sages say, you have to take it literally at some level, that when the sages have a disagreement, these and these are the words of the living God, so both opinions and the way that they said them are words of Hashem. So how do we understand this? That they're revealing what Hashem wants. And what He wants is Him, is He Himself. So that His thought becomes Hashem's thought, and so on. So this is the benefit, or this is the higher level the Torah has over davening, because in davening certainly I'm speaking my own words. So you would think the Torah is what you should do all day. But the sages said, Kol Omer en li el Torah, afilu Torah en lo. But the sages said, the person who says, I have nothing but Torah, even Torah he doesn't have. Huh? Okay. The person thinks that he has nothing but Torah in his life, so really he doesn't even have Torah. Why? שמאחר שהוא יש בדבר בפני עצמו, אזי אף כשמדבר דברי תורה, אין זה דבר השם כלל. ואין זה גילוי רצונו כלל. רק צריך להיות מקודם מבחינת הרצון יציאת מצרים מטה למעלה. That's why you also have to daven, because if you don't daven, then you're fooling yourself. You're saying the words of Hashem, but you're just saying them like a parrot. And whenever you say something from yourself, it's you. How do you prevent that from happening? How do you bring your words to be words that even when I'm learning Torah and I have some thought and I have some idea, that it's really Hashem's words and not my words, or in any case that it's not being held against me. And you know, the Reb Usher was terrible about Lomdei Torah. He used to curse them with every single type of curse. Reb Usher Freund. Yeah, that's why he got in trouble with everybody in the world. Why? Because it was very outspoken about the fact that people today think that all they're doing is just learning, and they're keeping the whole world going and saying. And he said, "What are you talking about? You're full of yourselves. You're not learning Torah. You're just repeating. For what? For your own benefit." It was very, very harsh. And it gave him a lot of trouble. But this is basically what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He's saying that if your davening is not such, if your prayer is not such that it's able to nullify your sense of being, so even when you go to learn, so it just continues the same way. You're just speaking yourself. You have to have this ratzon. Before you have this shov of sitting down and learning, you have to have this ratzon, this running to Hashem, which allows you to nullify your animal soul. Or at least, as we said before, not just to nullify it, but to free your divine soul from the feelings of self. And by you lifting up, going upwards, through the process of prayer, you get twice as much coming back down. That's the statement from the Zohar. That spirit that alights comes down twice as much. So if you're able to take your spirit beyond your feelings of self, what you reveal is twice as much. It's sort of like the idea of chash mal mal by the Baal Shem Tov. That chash, just one hachna, just one taking your spirit in one ratzon, you get two mouths. You get twice as much to speak. Okay. When you awaken from below, you cause itaruta dileila. You cause Hashem to awaken from above. And you cause the will to come down below. כמו תרומות ומעשרות וקורבנות, ולעבור חד המלכה לשתי במילין דאדיוטה. So, the question still remains, so what, Hashem's will is really about Meiser, about taking a tenth of your produce, and it's about korbanos, about bringing sacrifices. That's what he needs. It's not the way of a king to need all these things from his subjects. It's not his way to talk to them and tell them, I want this from you, and this amount of wine from you, and this one. It's almost like, what kind of a king are you if this is what you're demanding? So for that to be understood, that really is done for the animal soul. אז זה היה צריך מקודם שיניף הכהן את העומר, שהוא שעורה, שעור ה', מייחלה דבהמה רבה הנ"ל, לפני הוויה למעלה מההוויה, ועל ידי זה אחר כך, על ידי ספירת העומר, היה המשכת המקיפים למטה, לעומר וספרתם לכם, וכולי, 7 שבתות, והיה יכול להיות אחר כך מתן תורה בשבועות, שהוא גילוי רצונו כבכל למטה באותיות התורה. We finished. So he's saying that you needed this whole process of the Omer first in order to even go beyond Hashem as king. What does he mean? Why would the Torah suddenly talk about all these particulars? Saying if you only think about Hashem as king, just a Havaya, in that sense, really, Hashem has no need for all these things. A king shouldn't be interested in what his subject brought him, didn't bring him. But to be able to be really interested in the subject, and again, for him to be able to tell us what to do in order to rectify, in order to bring our animal soul to such a state where it can rectify itself with all the mitzvos, which is what he did in Matan Torah, when he gave the Torah. For that you need the Sfiras Omer. You need to build these makifim. You need to awaken from such a high place that it'll allow Hashem to bring down to you the particulars. To say it another way, that most people would say, why would the Torah include instructions for what to tell somebody to do with their lives? Not talking about mitzvahs now, just in general. People would come to the Baal Shem Tov and they ask him, what do I do? Should I buy this house or that house? What are you coming to me for? Go ask a real estate agent. Why would this be in Torah? It's not the way of a king to talk about such nonsensical things. Why would it be included? He says, no, if you understand that Hashem is not just a king, He's interested in everything. He's really interested also in your animal soul. So then you can look in the Torah and you can find specific instructions for these things. That's what you receive in Shavuos. That's what you receive on the day of the giving of the Torah. You receive Torah that will be applicable. It will be applicable to everything in your life. And it's not just something that's just the high thoughts and so on. So this is the Maimer. So hopefully next week, Monday at 10:15. Good Shabbos to everybody.